Thank you very much for coming, everybody. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy it is, but this is very exciting. Before I begin, of course, I'd like to, as we always do, acknowledge Aboriginal people. It's upon their ancestral lands that the university stands, acknowledging elders past and present as the traditional custodians of this place. But also, you hear me say time and time again, as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this place. And knowledge is at the heart of what we are as a university. Knowledge is how we're going to use in the next strategy to make, there was a slide there, progress for all, to make sure we have progress for all. And the thing that makes me most excited about this strategy is, as you see in the Societal Impact Framework, learning from, appreciating, drawing from, understanding our incredible Indigenous heritage, developed knowledge here for 60,000 years, is at the heart of the strategy going forward. So I really would like to thank everybody who's participated in that. Now, I'm just going to say a couple of things and then we'll get on to the important people on the panel. First of all, I am excited by this expo. One of the things I like about this developing this strategy is that it has been a real collaborative effort from people right across the university and in different ways. We've had over 2,000 staff, which is fantastic. 2,700 staff, 2,000 students. We've had a couple of thousand alumni. We've had industry partners, all people together coming up with strategy. And funny enough, there's been a remarkable amount of coherence across all the different groups, which I think is exciting. The other thing I love about this strategy is we've had all sorts of expert input. So we've had academics from business faculty, from ADA, from science, all helping with their expertise of how do you develop strategies? How do we engage people? How do we talk to our communities? All of those things, I think, are one of the great things that not only do we develop the strategy together as a community, but using the skills we have across that community to develop our strategy. The thing that I think that is interesting about this strategy is that we live in very interesting times. If you think about it, we've got geopolitical challenges around us like we've not seen for ages. We've got some regulatory challenges. The nature of higher education itself is fundamentally changing. Our incredible students are facing a world that is very different from when, say, I graduated. Actually, I graduated almost a month ago, 30 years ago. That just shows how old I am, okay? But the point is, the world is a very different place. And what this strategy enables us to do, and I'm showing how much of a geek I am because I was watching The Lord of the Rings with my daughter from the weekend as she prepares for the HSC. Gandalf said, quite wisely, we can't choose what time we live in, but what we can choose is what we do in that time, what our actions, how we change the times around us. So times are changing. Times are actually in some respects quite tough, where we can choose as a community of scholars, as a community university, students, alumni, we can choose what we do. And that's what this strategy is about. It's about our choices. It's about our responsibility as a university community in 2024. And what will we do with these incredible assets that the university have? And bias, I've said this many times lately, we are an extraordinary university. We have amazing students, excellent academics, phenomenal assets. How do we really use those? How do we make sure people get visibility of those? And how do we use those for this progress for all? And that's the second part that I suppose that I'm focused very much on the strategy. And it comes out of a 75th, quite fortunately. Many of you have heard me say before, back in 1949, UNSW was created as a university for the whole of New South Wales. Our founding purpose, and I'll read, was to create educational opportunities to give more people the skills New South Wales needed to progress and prosper after World War II, and to address the great challenges facing society. It was all about getting more opportunity for people, skills across society, and using our research to tackle some real big problems. Funny enough, that's almost exactly what we need to do now in 2024. So having the 75th anniversary, I think, is very fortuitous as we think through where we're going to go. But like back in 1949, one of the challenges, and even more so now, how do we make sure that progress is for all, what we call collective progress? One of the things that does keep me awake at night is as I see all the perturbations around the world of the technological impact and benefits that we all get, there's an increasing divide between the haves and the have-nots. We should not only not allow that to happen, we should work actively against it. Our role as a university is collective progress, progress for all. That makes it even more challenging. So not only are we having a strategy, we're in challenging times, not only do I give you all the challenge of how do we turn the dial and make it even more impact for society and positively, but through that impact, how do we make sure we bring everybody along so everybody benefits? So for me, those are the three kind of pillar stones of what the strategy is going forward. And funnily enough, the consultation, be it staff, student, alumni, community, all of them have actually coalesced around that, which I think is a fantastic thing of congruence across our community. So this week is all about how the last opportunity for staff particularly and students to really get involved in the strategy and make sure that they shape it for the next stage. It's all about connecting you with the mission, connecting you with our strategic themes, connecting each other with our objectives. We want to get really granular on some of those and being very, very clear about how to make sure all of that comes together to progress for all. One of the challenges, and I'll give it all to you who are here, and for those of you who spend the rest of the week with us, remember, UNSW is an awesome place, but we are very enthusiastic. We always say yes, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Keep doing that. But the challenge of that is sometimes we don't prioritize as hard as we should because we say, oh, that's a good idea. And we'll do that. And we'll do this. And we'll do this. One of the things about strategy is helping us prioritize. We can't do everything. We have to make sure that we really think through what is the most important things we can do and knuckle down on those ones for the next period. And that's why this strategy has got a big vision. How are we going to fundamentally shift the world in 25 years by the time that we're 100? Then we have a 10-year strategy, but then I'm going to make it prosaic and take it down to a 3-year strategy and a 1-year operational plan. So we know everyone knows what we're doing in 24, 25, 26. We always underestimate what we can do in the long term, which is why we have to keep this huge ambition for a strategy. But we often overestimate what we can do in the next 6 months. So part of the strategy is making sure we get the balance between being really aspirational for what we can do in the long term, and we will do, and more, we will do extraordinary things, but making sure we can break that down into bite-sized chunks that gives us confidence that we will keep on delivering. The thing I love about UNSW is this delivery focus. We'd rather get 20 things done really well than 100 things half done or poorly done. On that note, I would pause and I'm going to hand over to my wonderful colleague. I think it is Verity's next. But I would like to thank everybody in organising this week. Once again, the people here in the wonderful Michael Crouch Innovation Centre for their extraordinary skills to make sure that we use this whole week in a very good way. So thank you very much for that. All of the strategy team, because we're right getting back to the pointy end. And for you colleagues who've taken the time to be with us today, thank you very much for all the wonderful contribution you've made to the strategy thus far. Now, one thing before I hand over to Verity, I was going to be part of a panel going forward. I'm not. I'm going to run back up the hill and try and cajole, persuade, blackmail if I can, the government into giving us more money, okay? So that's where I'll be, because the more money we have, the easier strategies. Let me trust me on this one, okay? So I won't be here for the strategy session, but I'll be popping in and out all this week, and I'll be very interested to hear what the panelists have, but more importantly, your contributions to the panel. So thank you very much for taking the time today.
Hello, everybody. Now, as I was listening to Attila, I was actually hoping that these slides were up here and that I was going to have them while addressing you. Thanks, everybody. It's really lovely to be here today. I'd like to acknowledge that we're all meeting on Bidjigal land and to pay respect to elders past and present. So my job is to take you through the strategy as it currently stands. Now, it is still in draft, like we're still talking, we're still consulting. The feedback you give us today is obviously going to be important, but we're definitely now beginning to get to the pointy end of the strategy where we have some real things to show you. And I think probably what I've found most inspiring about this process has been its deeply participatory nature. I'm looking around at people in this room. I recognise many of you because you've already been a part of that participation. But for the new faces, I don't think I've ever seen a university strategy that has been so embedded in getting the opinions of all, of staff and students, and ploughing through that data to make sure it's a strategy that's truly owned by everyone at the university. So this, hopefully you can read it up there. I hope you can see it. This is our first attempt at the strategy on a page. As I said, it's not necessarily finalised, but it is there now for us to start to really flesh out what it is that we're seeing. Now, to explain it, I suppose the best way to explain it is many of you would have already been involved in the development of the UNSW Societal Impact Framework. And at the heart of this strategy sits the Societal Impact Framework. The framework is our guide. It's a guide really for UNSW staff and students, for the organisation itself, to keep ourselves accountable to our societal impact agenda, to inform our decision-making, relationship and partnership building, funding opportunities, and communications, but most importantly, to ground everything that we do in societal impact. So looking just at that, that's the Societal Impact Framework. And at its core, you'll see that incorporating Indigenous knowledges sits there at the core of the societal impact framework. So this is around embedding Indigenous people's ways of knowing, being and doing throughout our impact focus areas to improve society, and shows our commitment to advancing Indigenous knowledges and leadership in Australia and around the world. Through this, we demonstrate a significant commitment to the leadership and advocacy for Indigenous rights, aspirations, self-governance, education, and community-led outcomes. It is a main informing component of the draft UNSW strategy, of which, of course, the 4 impact focus areas are here, circulating around it. So let's explain how this strategy works, and they don't want me to talk about the focus areas yet, so I'll just explain. So if you look at this, we're saying these are our external goals. These impact focus areas are where we want our university's energy to be heading and where we want our impact to be. We want to accelerate the transition to a sustainable society. We want to enable healthy lives. We want to foster societal resilience, security and cohesion, and we want to advance economic and social prosperity. But how do we do that? How do we achieve that impact as an organisation? We do that through our impact pathways. And our impact pathways are also strategic themes, but in essence, empowering current and future generations through the teaching that we do. That is leading knowledge, creation, innovation and translation through the research that we do. And we're very deliberate within the strategy, if you go and dive deep, about that research being deeply partnered, deeply impact-driven. Convening knowledge across sectors and building networks locally and globally. Now, that's really important too, because you could be doing brilliant teaching, you could be doing wonderful research, but if you're not talking to anyone about it or collaborating with anyone or convening networks to try to drive change, you're not doing a whole lot of stuff with it. So that role that the university can play as a convener is probably one of the most important roles universities can play in the 21st century. How do we get all of those different voices around the table to drive for change? Another big part of our impact pathways is making sure we create a culture internally. So a culture at the university where all people are united by purpose and can deliver their best work. So that's really about making sure we're all working at our best and enthused, and that we're creating a good workplace, a psychologically safe workplace, a physically safe workplace too. And that we're developing inspiring environments and simple, effective, trust-based systems. And that's really talking about making sure that our systems work for our people, that we're not getting bogged down in bureaucratic processes that are preventing our impact, and that actually we're getting the systems to work for us. So all that is our strategy on a page, and that's what we'll be digging deeper into today and getting more and more feedback in. Obviously, sitting underneath each of these impact focus areas and each of these impact pathways are specific initiatives that we will be focusing on as part of the strategy to drive the strategy. But what's great about it is all of this is delivered through our values, which have already been decided. These are the same values we had at the last strategy. We loved them so much and there was such a deep sense of commitment to them that we kept them, demonstrating excellence, building collaboration, driving innovation, embracing diversity and displaying respect. And of course, that speaks to our very distinctive motto, the motto of UNSW, where we used to have just hands and minds, and now we have hearts as well. So that's our strategy on a page, where all of it is to strive for collective progress. And as Attila's already said, not much point having progress unless it's collective progress. It's an inclusive progress, both so that individuals can prosper, but also so that society is just a better place for all. So that's an overview of the strategy. Is that all I now need to do, Davina? Okay, so that's the overview of the strategy. You'll have an opportunity to dive deeper later on. We're now going to have a panel to talk a little bit more. Oh, sorry, and we're still, sorry, that's not in my, David Burt, but not David Burt. Okay, sorry, on my run sheet, I'm about to introduce David Burt. But could you please go? Thank you.
Thank you, Verity. Yes, not David Birth. David, unfortunately, has fallen sick. So my name is Dina Titkova. I am a senior manager with UNSW Founders. And it's my particular pleasure to be welcoming you to this space today to talk about strategy. You may be wondering why I am here on this stage when we talk about strategy. So let me start with telling who are we. At UNSW Founders, we are a team of 25 people across different domains of knowledge, with the sole focus of supporting our staff, students, and alumni, of converting their ideas from early stage to going global. Over years, we support 12,000 people on an annual basis. 500 ideas give birth. We take them further. We drive over 3 million in private investment into UNSW startups, and we supported and invested over 120 of those. Our startups now raised over 150 million in funding. But again, why we're here? The answer lies in the Strategy 2025. Back in 2015, UNSW made a bold statement and decided to include entrepreneurship as one of its core pillars, along with very much traditional research and student experience in teaching. This has propelled the journey of the university to the next level with ambition to be Australia's preeminent entrepreneurial university. This has further allowed for this center to be born thanks to a generous donation of $10 million from Michael Crouch, who wanted for UNSW to have this physical hub of innovation and connection and to be a leader in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And the things started happening on the very first day. And today I'm going to focus my talk on how ambition and strategy can lead to real world outcome. So among the very first visitors to this space back in 2015 were 2 very entrepreneurial PhD students from School of Astronautics at UNSW. So really, Hiranya pictured here, they had a brilliant idea to use their PhD and knowledge to mine asteroids for drug metals. They ran hackathons, they ran meetups, they created a community. In 2017, when we launched our flagship 10X Accelerator program, they've been accepted into the cohort as a wild card, as something idea crazy enough to get everyone curious, but not good enough to make people believe they can do it. Through the program, they pivoted to become the very first commercial company in the world, which will be observing satellites in space and prevent space debris from being formed. So just for your knowledge, we do have tons of satellites lost in the space on the annual basis, which makes our space very crowded. The team has springboarded since then. They've been accepted into the leading startup accelerator on the planet, YC Combinator, that led them to raising their Series A millions of funding. They've been receiving multiple awards, but they also one of the leading space tech companies in Australia, and their ambition to sustain this. They have offices in the UK and US, and they count governments, defense departments of governments across the world as their customers. And they're making sure they will become the leader going forward. Let's go down from space to be something that is more familiar maybe for us at university, and it's about teaching and students. So another very early visitor to the space was Pasha, with his company that back then was called Inside Sherpa and now called Forage. Pasha's and his co-founder idea was about empowering students from underprivileged backgrounds to have the best job opportunities they might have. In 2017, they've been also accepted into the Founders 10X Accelerator program along the Here guys, and they run their beautiful mentoring platform. But they have an ambition to support millions around the world, and they found a way of doing so by running virtual internships with the best employers in the world. Having been accepted into Y Combinator, the leading startup accelerator in the world, it's further springboarded their journey. So where are they now? 55 million raised in private funding. They have 70 employees across Australia and US. They have over 125 leading employers, biggest companies in the world, who recruit virtual interns to their platform. 1,000 partner universities, but most important, over 6 million enrollments for students from underprivileged backgrounds receiving free access to virtual internships. The company has been acquired earlier this year and merged with a yes edutech company, but they proved the point. You can build an edutech business and business for good while being a successful company. How about robotics? So Heba and her co-founders from Graduate School of Biomedical Engineering, they ventured to take a leap towards the future of automation and robotics by now enabling our robots to have a sense of touch. If you know a bit about startup and innovation ecosystem in Australia, you would immediately shake your hand and say, that's not possible. Australia is not the right place to drive an advanced manufacturing business. They didn't think so. Based on their research, they decided to spin out the company out of UNSW, participated in all possible programs to upskill themselves and connect with mentors and investors, and have been accepted into Founders to Next program in 2020. Received investment from UNSW, got connections to the US, successfully raised their funding round, and now it's a company located at the heart of Sydney and being among the handful of companies in the world who can bring the sense of touch to robots by providing high accuracy sensor solutions. What about health? Another brilliant alumni of UNSW who's done his PhD here was tasked by an Indian-based cardiac surgeon with a task. My patients are dying not because I'm a bad surgeon, they are dying because they do not have access to an affordable heart pump. They are too expensive. Can you make them twice cheaper? That was 2017. In 2019, Peter found out that we do run a health tech support program here called Health to Next. Being a brilliant engineer, he was accepted with his leading technology. Through the program, he acquired networks and skills that allowed the company to further fundraise $4 million, successfully proceed to stage of preclinical studies. They have completed them recently in India, and their ambition is to be the next ResMed of Australia based out of here in Sydney. So you may feel that I might talk those stories for quite a while because we did support hundreds of startups who did amazing jobs. But what it led to is that over past years, UNSW has been recognized as the most entrepreneurial university in Australia. And if you talk to anyone, no one can doubt this. We went beyond Australia, and UNSW received EEE award as a recognition for us being a university leading innovation and entrepreneurship in the region. We also went and expanded beyond this campus by launching a program in Liverpool, UNSW Founders Leap Entrepreneurship Program, supporting our greater Western Sydney community with acquiring skills, networks to progress and have impact. And very much in line with ambition set in 2025, we are also not going to stay still. We are here with an ambition to be continuously recognized as the most entrepreneurial university in Australia, to be a hub for driving entrepreneurship and innovation, and achieve real-world impact through entrepreneurship. And most important, we are here to make entrepreneurship available for all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For those who are still standing at the back, we're just moving into the panel. If you do want to take a seat, we do still have a few in the front here, conscious that might, it's a long time to be standing, so please sit down if you'd like to. My name, for those who haven't had a chance to meet, is Davina MacArthur, and I have the pleasure of leading the process to develop the new strategy, and for this afternoon run the panel whereby we get to hear from four women who are incredibly involved in the strategy development process. And so we thought a nice way to bring the strategy to life and also give you an opportunity to ask questions. So the way that we'll do that, we have a few pre-prepared questions, and then you'll see on the slide behind me there's a Slido code. So feel free to jump on there and ask a question of us this afternoon. So just you have heard from Verity, but to introduce the other members of my panel, I have Arthi. Arthi has been involved in ARC in the past and has been advising me alongside one of our other student reps in terms of the process and the strategy. Has many other hats, but I'm just going to stick with the ones related to strategy today. Alison Avery, who is, I think, channeling Attila and having a go at her own answers as well, has been directly involved in leading the strategy with me. And then Claire Annesley, who's our Dean of ADA, is also on one of, as part of the strategy, have a strategy steering committee, and Claire has been involved in that. So each of them involved in different ways, and therefore we thought would be well placed to answer the questions that you might have this afternoon on strategy. So to get the ball rolling, what I thought I'd ask each of our panellists is, the title of our new strategy is Progress for All. And what does that term mean to you? How would you define it?
Is that working? Yeah. Progress for all. So I would say that I think as a student, it's really hard to see how strategy covers me because, you know, I'm graduating in a couple of years. The strategy is extending way past that. And so before this, it was really hard to visualize why it mattered to me as a student. But the idea of progress for all, I think, sort of helps that, because it's the idea that it's not just for staff and for academics, it's for students as well. And it does cover everyone. So that's sort of what I see with that.
I really like Progress for All as our strategy name, because I think progress goes very to the heart of the ambition that's in this strategy and the ambition that I see at UNSW. So you saw before all the amazing things the Founders Program were doing, but that real sense of innovation and ambition, but it's an inclusive ambition. So all of this we do both so that individual lives can be better, but also so that society can be better. And I think that I really love the way that encapsulates both the ambition and the egalitarianism of our strategy.
So for me, Progress for All really speaks to that kind of founding mission that UNSW had, and that's really embedded in our DNA, is that in everything that we do, we work with industry and government and our communities to try to make our community, New South Wales, Australia, a better place. So I think Progress for All really captures the essence of what is so unique about UNSW as a university. But for me, the all is really important, because we often talk about, progress for individuals or progress for society. But, this is a time, Attila talked before about the moment that we live in. This is also a time where actually we have to be thinking about all life on Earth. And so if I really wanted to kind of stretch us, I would be stretching that all to be thinking that this is a strategy for thinking about how we can look after the planet as well as ourselves and our society.
And with my Attila hat on, I think you heard what Attila had to say about the importance of that collective progress and the being together, which is really driving his absolute vision about how he wants us all to engage with this strategy. I think the exciting part for me is this, we've really tested this along the way, that for many of you who've involved with developing any kind of document or initiative or anything at a university, somebody has a great idea and sometimes it gets lost along the way. This has been absolutely tested in all sorts of groups about what, and it's actually founded on a lot of fantastic market research. We've asked our alumni, we've asked our industry partners, what is it that makes UNSW different? What is it that they can invest in and that they see as our point of difference? So along the way, early in the process, we really went through a whole lot of names for the strategy, and we said, should we call it Strategy 2050? Should we call it the strategy? And I'm sure many of you in the room have a million different ideas of what it could or couldn't be called, but everyone kept being drawn back to this idea of collectively we have to be progressing together. And I think that's really exciting for me with my engagement hat on, that it's something that people are really investing and engaging with.
Wonderful. And for each of you, what excites you most about the new strategy in terms of what you've seen so far and what's in it?
So I really like that it kind of starts in the classroom and then extends outwards. And so for me, I sort of visualize myself in the classroom learning, and then how can I use what I learn to impact the rest of the world? And it's really cool that that applies to like every student out there. They learn and then they can sort of use that outside to really impact everyone else. And so I think, yeah, the way that we sort of start with the idea of the generations and supporting future generations and then how they can sort of support the others around them is really exciting.
Well, I like big, ambitious projects. And so what I love most, what excites me most about the strategy is the huge potential, the sheer potential that's in there. I remember when Attila joined UNSW, I remember in the early months of him being here with us as VC, him saying that there's so much more to UNSW than he ever imagined. When you look at our website or when you look at documents about UNSW, you see that there's a huge amount going on. But it's not until you get into the guts of the institution and you meet people like, the ones that are in this room and in all of the offices across UNSW, you see just how much is already happening. And so I see this strategy as a huge opportunity for us to channel that and amplify that for this shared collective purpose. And if we can do that, the impact is going to be absolutely phenomenal, because there are people in every corner of UNSW working to ensure that we have healthier lives, to ensure that we have more sustainable societies and so on. And so the potential in this strategy is what excites me most.
Thank you. And I think what excites me most is even the journey that we've been on so far as part of this development, that when we started and we started talking to people about what is it that you want to see in this strategy, and I'm not going to lie, there's a few people that said, well, I've got an issue with the travel system, or I've got an issue with, we need to do better at particular kind of, smaller things. But what's been really exciting is now that people are talking about how can we use AI for the next 10 years, or actually how can we make sure that communities are better represented and supported as part of the research that's being done. And I think that's exciting for me, that through this process that people are actually really seeing how us as small cogs in the wheel can have a much bigger impact across everything we do. And that's exciting.
And I echo what everyone said. I really like the fact the strategy has external indicators as well. So it's not just about what we achieve internally, but it's about what we achieve externally, and how we contribute to broader goals. So there are actually going to be clear targets in the strategy around net zero by 2045. I think we're trying to get it a bit earlier than the government's commitment. And I really like that about it. And second, I also, because I'm new to UNSW, what's really struck me about UNSW is, it's a research-intensive institution. It's got this real rigour, and it's an amazing research happening here, but it's still connected and it's still nimble, or nimble-ish, and it's still sort of has those really good relationships with the outside world and those partnerships and those innovations and stuff. And that's real gold. Like, if you can harness that, that's pretty unique. You get a lot of research-intensive institutions that can't do the partnering well, and you get a lot of less rigorous research institutions who partner really well but don't have that deep depth and rigour, and I think that's amazing.
Wonderful, thank you. And given that each of you have been involved in the process to date, I'd be interested in something that's either come through in the staff feedback or the student feedback that's really kind of caught your attention throughout this process.
I'll start on that one, because what I found most interesting, and was a real sort of insight into generational inequality, is when we were talking to the students, cost of living issues and housing affordability were right up the top. And it's not that staff didn't care about that, but it was further down. And so the staff top issues were around sustainability, climate change, fair enough, everyone, both staff and students, had a reaction around, felt equity and social justice were really strong, but it was fascinating to see that generational divide around cost of living and affordable housing.
I think the really interesting thing I found about talking to students is they often don't really connect with the idea of strategy in general. Like when you hear the word strategy, you sort of get a bit bored as a student, and like you don't really know what it's on about. But when you actually talk about what's covered by the strategy and the issues inside the strategy, that's what they really care about. And so that sort of was raised by Ollie and I when we were chatting to Davina about how to engage with students, is we had to really shift the conversation to how do we get them to talk about what matters to them, not necessarily just strategy as a whole, which is really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, donuts. Yeah. I think it's an extension of my answer before. I think it's really seeing how people have a light bulb's gone off with an idea about how it really taps into a bigger picture, that people are thinking about what they're doing here and how it might translate into an event they're going to have, or they've had an idea bubbling along and they've almost asked for permission, and the feedback we've got has almost emboldened them to say, wow, I'm allowed to have this idea and someone's going to listen, and it might not happen next week, but this is going to be part of a bigger picture and I'm in it for the long haul. And that's been probably the thing that's come through most strongly.
With in the consultation, there's two things that have really jumped out at me. One is just the sheer numbers of people who have engaged in the consultation. We heard that from Attila at the start, the number of staff and students and alumni and external partners who have engaged in that. And so that's been super impressive, but it hasn't just happened like that. Alison and Davina and Vinita have done such an incredible job designing that consultation and running it in a way that's really brought people in. And I think that's been beautiful to see. I think it's really brought our community together in a new and exciting way. The other thing that keeps jumping out at me in conversations about the strategy, and I guess that's particularly in my faculty and in conversations with my fellow deans, is that when we think about the big changes, the big shifts that we want to make in sustainability or healthy lives or economic prosperity, we all know and we all get it that we can't do that in our little disciplinary silos or faculty silos anymore. And there's this massive sense of energy and kind of passion and commitment to working in ways that are much more interdisciplinary, much more connected, working, across academic and professional communities to really, really drive this change. And I think that that's come out very strongly in the conversations that I've had about the strategy.
Great, thank you. And what do you think we need to prioritise in our new strategy, Progress for All? What are your thoughts on what we should focus or prioritise?
Well, I'm hoping that's what everyone in the room here is going to help us to do. And I think it sounds like I'm dodging the question, but I think it's a collective decision that we all have to make around identifying a whole lot of things we can do and where we'll get the most impact. We haven't really talked about it very much so far in this session, but how we measure the impact and how we evaluate our impact is really important as part of this. And I think there's a bit of work we still need to do, and hopefully that's one of the priorities of this week, to identify where can we have, where's perhaps the low-hanging fruit, but also where do we want to be in 10 years' time, and what do we have to say yes and no to or pause in order to get to some of those goals. So I think it has to be a collective decision-making as part of that.
So I think the strategy has great priorities so far. I think overall what I reckon we should prioritise is the accessibility of it. So the idea that anyone should be able to read it and then engage with it and be able to understand it. And that could be anyone who is like joining the uni for the first time or has been here for years or is a student or staff or international or domestic. Anyone should be able to just like read it and get it. And so I think that should probably be one of the number ones up there.
I think we've got to prioritise implementation, which sounds a bit boring, but so what's great about strategy is it gets you to, agree on the goals. But strategies, as Attila said when he began, are actually about choices. And, we do have limited resources. And really what we need to do is once we've got the strategy, say this is now what we're going to deliver. And there will be choices, including even in saying those societal impact focus areas are the areas that we are really going to lean into and be producing, excellent research, teaching and even telling the stories about that impact. So, yeah, disciplined implementation, always a bit harder than it seems.
Implementation's my answer to the next question. My answer to what we need to prioritise is actually people. So our people at UNSW, and I'm probably a little bit biased because I got to work with Gemma and Paul Sheehy developing the objectives around people. And I think that is so, so important. So the goal's there to create a culture where we're united by purpose and we're people doing our best work. I think that is the thing that we really have to prioritise, and that's about exemplifying UNSW values, having the right people doing the right work at the right time, growing and rewarding our people, unlocking their potential, making sure that we trust and empower staff. I really love the people dimensions of this strategy, and I really love that it's a kind of a pillar in its own right and not just sort of something that sits underneath. I think that prioritising our people and empowering everyone at UNSW to, as Alison said, deliver this strategy in the way that feels most authentic to them, I think then we're on to a winning formula.
You might want to keep the microphone then and go to the next question, which is what's one thing for each of you, in your opinion, that we have to get right in terms of the strategy to be a success?
So mine's implementation, and I think we've got to prioritise implementation because we've got to, in the implementation, we've got to make sure that we're just not relying on the same old teams or the same old groups or the same old researchers, but we really are drawing on all the talents of UNSW, and we really are pulling people together in unique cross-disciplinary or functional ways to tackle things in fresh ways. But I think we've got to, the other thing that we've got to get right is I think we've got to design the implementation in a way that isn't too kind of over-engineered or that kind of gets us caught up in a whole load of kind of bureaucracy, kind of strategic bureaucracy. And I think if we can implement the strategy in a way that's light and creative, then we will have done a great thing.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Arthi said around accessibility, and I think it's critical that everybody can see the part they've got to play in the strategy. That will be about having achievable goals as well as aspirational goals. It's about being accessible from a diverse group of people who are at the university, and also whichever campus you're at across the university, or however you are representing UNSW globally. And I think that's what we've got to get right. People must be able to see themselves in this, and it's not a document that gets put in a drawer that we never speak of again, that people are living and breathing it, and it's a living document that people feel very attached to.
Mine's sort of similar to what's been said before, but I was going to say that everyone should be able to look at the strategy and then figure out how it matches them. And it should be sort of malleable enough that you can kind of take it in your own way and go with it, but also set in stone enough to really embody our values, and have that balance between both.
Everyone said everything I wanted to say. I mean, I could just copy Claire and say, I think the people are the most important thing to get it right. And I think everyone's already talked about how being able to see yourself in the strategy and to be able to actually make decisions about where the university is heading, that's what we've got to get right.
Absolutely. And interestingly, this the last question I had planned to ask links in one of the questions that's come through on the Slido, which is this question around distinctiveness. And what's been really interesting as part of this strategy process is we've had these 4 characteristics or guiding principles that we've been using to come back to again and again to say, how do we make sure we're truly ambitious? How do we get our foundations right? How do we amplify our societal impact? And the final one being, how do we be distinctive? And universities, by their nature and the way that they're set up, in the way that they're funded, means that to set out to be unique would be very difficult. But what we were quite conscious of is how do we think about that unmistakable characteristics that you can look at our graduates, you can think about for our staff to say, that's something really distinctive. And so be interested in each of your views about what's sort of one of those most distinctive characteristics of UNSW that we need to bring forward.
I think what is distinctive about our strategy is, as I said, it's got external facing accountabilities. I actually don't know another strategy that does that, where we actually say we want to achieve these concrete things out there in the world and we're going to judge ourselves against the achievement of those goals. And I think that that's really distinctive and it really leans into the public purpose role of universities. So, yeah, let's see how we go.
I would say it was sort of talked a bit about before in the presentations, but the balance between education, innovation and research, and the fact that we do all 3 really well. Being a student in the School of Science, we have a lot of talk about research and you get to see some of the incredible research that's done here. And so the fact that as a student, I can get access to great education, but also access to really cool researchers as my lecturers and professors is really awesome. And I think that's definitely something that should be brought through.
And I think it's the progress for all piece that we talked about before. And with my Attila hat on, I know that he feels very strongly about. I think it's not one individual thing that will make us distinctive, but it's that collective piece that we're all working to. I also wanted to say before I hand over to Claire, please test it this week and ask your colleagues to come and test it when they're down here looking at the posters and all of the opportunity you have to give some feedback on where it's landed so far. Please tell us if there's a big piece missing or you're really feeling like something's not landing. Now's the opportunity to contribute and to really let us know. And think about what you're doing in your own work and whether it does fit in with one of those areas or hopefully perhaps a few of the areas and how you're having that collective progress.
Thank you, Alison. I'm going to finish by honouring our hosts today and say that one of the really distinctive things that I love about UNSW is its the reputation that it has in entrepreneurialism, in startups, in innovation. And that is, as you said, a real success story of the last strategy and something that I just think we need to lean in and own even more. UNSW is the most entrepreneurial university in Australia, in the Asia Pacific. It's number 1 in startups. That's amazing. But there's a paradox at UNSW, which is that while we have this fantastic external success, our own staff survey tells us that only 54% of us agree that UNSW is good at acting on new or innovative ideas. So the way that we run ourselves, I think we could do a lot more to learn from founders and that incredible entrepreneurial and innovative spirit and really drive innovation and agility and kind of entrepreneurialism in how we run UNSW itself. And then it is going to be the most immense powerhouse.
Thank you. Great responses to all of those questions, and a few of them line up with those that we've have come through in the Slido. I'll just take a couple of the Slido questions and then conscious of giving everyone a little bit of time to walk through the exhibition space before we formally close the launch. What are probably the ones that are standing out to me? There's one here around how do we ensure we both continue to champion and stay honest about what's not working as well as what is?
One of the things about this strategy is, although it's a 10-year strategy, it's got three-year cycles, right? And the idea, and when you have a look at it, you'll see that we have objectives. So we have the theme lead, the objectives we want to achieve, and then we have initiatives sitting under it. And the initiatives are going to be 3-year initiatives. And that's very much so that we can actually see how we're going and check in, see if something's working and shift tack if it isn't working. So we've already built into the structure of how the strategy is going to work to have some of that feedback loop so that we can adjust as we go along.
I think the way that the strategy has been developed in such an open, consultative way, I know that Attila has come to, many town halls across all the faculties and divisions to talk about the strategy and to hear what's going well and what's not going so well. And I think that culture of listening and kind of candor that it's developing and is really coming alive through this strategic process, I think is one of the ways that we're going to keep ourselves real and make sure that we know what's going right and what's not going right.
There's a couple of questions that have come through that relate to how we really bring to the fore and enhance and drive our progress in the equity, diversity and inclusion space. What are the specific ways that you see that coming through in the strategy?
We talk about it explicitly in the Empowering Future Generations pathway, which is about education. So we talk explicitly around our existing Gateways program, which is our program for students from low SES backgrounds to enter UNSW. But we also talk about it in terms of the Accord. So I don't know how on top of everything about the Accord that people are in the room, but there's a big focus from the government around increasing the participation of low SES people in this country, and they're going to be funding a whole range of new ways for us to do that, including through enabling pathways, where we'll partner with UNSW College so that people can have many more pathways with which to enter university, not just Year 12 ATAR, which of course is just but one pathway. So we'll be leaning very heavily into that space, and as I said, it's outlined in our student
I was just going to
priority.
say as well that we're listening to all the voices and all the experts across the university as part of this, and people like Professor Bruce Watson, who has been an incredible leader in this space for many years, is on the steering committee for the strategy, and everything from accessibility for people with disability to different diverse groups. We're speaking quite a lot with our student groups as well to make sure that all voices are heard, and I think that's what we're really listening to as well. And again, part of this week is really to test, have we addressed that enough, and are we reflective enough of that, or are there areas that we need to put some more effort into?
And this goes a little bit to some of your earlier answers sort of collectively across the panel, but I think it's an important one to raise. So someone said, postdoc, I struggle to keep a contract and develop my career. Papers and grants will actually get me a job, but how does this strategy help me?
This is a long silence. So the going back to what I said before about how people are the most, I think, people are the thing that we have to prioritise most in the strategy. We're a very, very big, diverse community. One of the goals that one of the objectives that we set ourselves in the people section is to develop and reward our people. I think there's a lot more that we can do to support early career academic. That's something that got called out in the Insight survey last year as well. And developing more programs for early career academics to develop their careers either at UNSW or at other fantastic universities or in industry or in government or in whatever it is that they end up doing, I think is a very important part of the strategy.
Wonderful. I think that's probably all we have time for, but really, if we can just take a moment to thank our panellists and their participation. I'm just going to reiterate what Alison said, which is to thank you all for coming this afternoon. Please share with your colleagues or fellow students that this is happening this week. We're really keen to hear from you and hear your feedback and really test the content of where we're up to with the strategy with you. So take some time, have a look at what's in the back of the area in terms of the exhibition hall, and we're here all week. So feel free to drop in as often as you can. Thank you very much. Yes, yeah. So there's the full sort of set of activities is online, but we do have talks at 4 p.m. every day. So come along, and that really shows you how we're bringing to life our impact focus areas in particular and components of the societal impact framework, as well as 2 panels at 11 a.m. on Wednesday and Thursday, one around AI and one around our transition to a sustainable society. So it's a great lineup of events, and we're really pleased to be sharing that with you.